It's the last Coffeehouse. We did it! We found the longest book of all time. It's Gargantua and Pantagruel by François Rabelais. It's a satire about some mythological stuff. It was published in parts from 1532 to 1564. Now, I did. I went through the trek. I got to the end. I read the whole thing. Well, read a lot of it and then listened to the rest of it. But I got through the whole thing. So what are the contents? It's got a lot of sex, a lot of lowbrow humor. Apparently the point was to thumb its nose, so for Rabelais to thumb his nose at religious asceticism. They had a lot of creeping religious asceticism at the time, so this was kind of a counterattack to that. It was occasionally funny, can't deny that. There were some funny bits that made me laugh along the way. Generally, it's just the main characters, a giant, Gargantua, and his son, Pantagruel, getting into shenanigans. So I think the first book was about Pantagruel and him, and it would have things like, I think it has both of them as children, being born and going to school and things like that. It'll have things from their childhood, and they'll grow up and want to get married and that sort of thing. And I know they're like giants and stuff, so it's a little strange. There's a battle at some point. There's other stuff going on. The word cuck is used a lot. But there were also portions of the book that would just be lists for pages, just lists of things. Thing after thing after thing. It would have like a noun or something or another word just modified by another word, and it would just say it over and over and over and over again. And just keep going. And I'm sure there's some reason... But I was so uninterested in whatever this was trying to say. I get that it was just a satirical attack on the asceticism or whatever, on being too rigid. It's like, hey man, let's just go out and smoke some stuff and have some sex, whatever, fine. But at some point I completely shut off, and I didn't care what it was trying to say. There wasn't enough when it came to like philosophical rigor or plot structure or anything like that was keeping attention. It was just stuff kept happening, and more stuff and more stuff and more stuff, and it was just racing along. So I didn't even I'm so sorry, I did not even record any quotes in my notes here, and I'm not gonna go back and find ones that I had highlighted or whatever, so I'm just gonna read a couple so you understand what the writing style is, because that's what I do. Quote, readers, friends, if you turn these pages, put your prejudice aside, for really there's nothing here that's outrageous, nothing sick or bad or contagious. Not that I sit here glowing with pride, for my book all you'll find is laughter. That's all the glory my heart is after, seeing how sorrow eats you, defeats you. I'd rather write about laughing than crying, for laughter makes men human and courageous. François Rabelais. That he didn't put his name in the quote. That was the end of the quote before that. So honestly, that kind of seems like nice. He seems like a nice guy. It seems quality. I just want to make you laugh. That's all I'm trying to do. That's kind of a nice thing. So sorry for trashing your book. Quote, this is the true nature of gratitude. Time gnaws and diminishes all things, but it increases and adds to our good deeds. Anytime we have extended a generous hand to a rational human being, that goodness keeps growing and glowing in the man's heart. Forever remembered, constantly contemplated, end quote. Nice, super sweet sentiment. Again, okay, I was trying to find something that would annoy me, but I don't know that I'll have a chance here. Oh, here you go. I perceive I will die confected in the very stench of farts. Alright, great. I never wanted to say that word again in my life. I haven't said it for a very long time. And look what you did. You made me say it because you're so lowbrow, you trash. So thank you for giving me a chance to throw a fit about that. But that's the writing style. I mean, there are some clever like I said, I laughed occasionally, and it was fine. It was originally written in French, obviously, but I could not get into this damn thing. Analysis. That's right, we're going right to it. So, the fifth book apparently is disputed as authorship of it. It might have been somebody else who wrote it. I didn't read the details on that. One expert on this particular work described the work as exhibiting carnivalesque and grotesque realism, which is actually the analysis by this guy sounds much more interesting than the actual book. So carnivalesque, it makes sense to me. It felt like you were just kind of tossed in and then just shook around all over the place. So it's like being at a carnival. Things are just popping up all over, and you pay for that. You have your cheap, crappy food, and although some there's this one county. No, that's not a carnival. That's a fair. What's a carnival? I know what a carnival, but this fair was amazing. It had amazing food. It was so good. And then another one, it was the state fair, had the worst gyro I've ever, it's top 2 worst foods I've ever had in my entire life. It was so bad. It was absolutely horrendous. It was disgusting. It was one of the few meals ever that I didn't finish. And I've accidentally eaten things with pickles, and pickles are horrendous. So, I mean, this thing was, disgusting. Anyway. But Carnivalesque, it sounds like whatever the theory is behind that, sounds like a good description of it. If somebody, pings me somewhere and says that this book is absolutely incredible, I need to reread it, then I'll go read this analysis of it and try to figure out whether it's actually worth it or not. And grotesque realism, so that sounds apt too. I mean, a lot of it was kind of strange because you felt like you were still tethered to the things that happen to human beings. You know, like you have your regular birth and marriage and wars and that kind of a thing and going to school, but you're a giant and all sorts of weird stuff is going on. So grotesque realism is probably a good description too, which both of those ideas make it sound more interesting to me. And of course, there's a whole being critical of certain ascetic religious practices, which was something that the Decameron did before this. So I don't know how incredibly novel it was, but still, I mean, 2 books like 50 years apart, they can do roughly the same things. I mean, it's not that terrible of a thing. But it didn't actually seem to go as far as to criticize religion in general. It seemed more these particular practices that tell you have to be so rigid and throw off all the positive things, you know, the enjoyable, pleasurable things in life. That throwing all those things on the trash heap, that is what is being criticized. So there were some really cool illustrations that I saw related to the book, but they weren't in the version that I had. I just saw them related to it elsewhere. Big picture wise, after this and Infinite Jest, can we just please stop with long ass books, please? I don't want to read anymore of these kinds. Anybody writing now, if it's like gigantic, just cut it up, make it a sequel or something at least. Or just you don't need that many words. Nobody needs that. Get an editor. Nobody needs that many words, Jesus. So, where is literature today? That is the question, because as we were coming up, obviously, they were challenging social norms. That's a big part of what was happening. When you have things like E.M. Forster challenging how the expectations of women in society and that kind of a thing. Same thing for like Virginia Woolf, and these books, the Decameron and Gargantua and Pantagruel, are challenging what you see as immoral versus moral, and what kinds of behaviors and kinds of pleasures you can be okay with versus not, and all that. So what is literature doing today? It just seems like all the things, like that open decadence thing, is completely played out. It's already been done 100% by now, and all of the stances that people writing literature today that are just trying to push some kind of a more open narrative, or you like do what you want kind of a thing, it's just it's already over. There's nothing else to talk about on that front. So it's weird, because the revolutionary narrative now would be one that's saying that it's okay to have those restrictions. It's okay to be inspired by them or interested in them, to have those restrictions on yourself and on people. And I'm not talking about like tyrannical ones or anything like that. I'm talking about like socially. It's okay to buy into the idea of family. It's okay to buy into the idea of monogamy or something like that. That would be the revolutionary thing to be saying right now. That it's something that we got over it being some aspect of social pressure, and now we realize, it's actually a pretty good thing. So I don't know, that seems where literature kind of is, and I want to I want to see where literature goes now. I don't know, I'm going to read the rest of these great works of literature. I'm going to keep reading all the nonfiction stuff, and then we'll see where we are. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. This is the Last Coffeehouse. Bye.